Well, let's get started. Today we're doing a yoga for runners video, but it's obviously good for everybody. But it's kind of fun once in a while to do a specific yoga for such and such. I don't know, I just think it's fun. So today is part one of, I don't even know, to be, to be honest, like 4 maybe. There's lots of different elements to how to make your body really good at such and such. And so it kind of is applicable for any sport or just, humaning. And today I wanted to focus on tendons and ligaments and then talk a little bit about that as well while we're doing the things. So not like a traditional yoga practice, but make ourselves really healthy, preventative measures kind of a yoga class. So the first one is hero pose. And I always say that I think it's called hero pose because you kind of feel like a hero if you can get into it, or you have to be one to get into it. But there's always a phase one. Oh, I forgot my blocks, so I'm going to bring them over here. And this is yin style, meaning of course that it is really, really gentle. We hold things for longer, that type of thing. And so I like to have a blanket beneath my whole pose. And I also forgot my timer. It's over here. Okay. So to get into hero, we start in a kneeling position, hence the blanket. And the knees are together, the feet are apart. And then if we were to just sit right back, for most of us that's not doable. If you can, fantastic, that's great. But if not, sitting up on one block in between the feet, maybe 2, maybe 3, and maybe even still leaning a bit forward if you're not able to get all the way down. So this is one, take your time getting set up. Now, my blanket is not even set up the way it should be. And the reason is because the ankles, if you have very mobile ankles, I'm actually going to start a timer now. Then the way I have mine set up is a modification for the ankle stretch. So this is great if you don't have very flexible ankles. And the reason why is because my blanket is not beneath my toes, but it's beneath everything else. So it'll make the stretch on the ankle more mild, which is great if you're looking for that. So if you are, this is the setup you're looking for. If not, I'm actually going to move my knees forward and then have my toes all the way onto my blanket. And then we just hang out here for a bit. And so the reason why this stretch in particular, and remember, mild stretch. So anytime we're working on tendons and ligaments, not like this feels like a good stretch, but like almost feel nothing. It's better to be up on more blocks, more blankets, so that you feel like you could stay there forever. And so the tendons and ligaments we want to stretch specifically for running are in the feet and in the knees. So this is great for knee health, which is always an issue when running, right? Running being a high impact sport, we really want good joint health. So when we're in, I don't even know where to start. There's so much to talk about. I'll start with the knees. So when we are compressing, which we're doing here, they say that you can actually rebuild cartilage doing this. Now, a couple of caveats here. You can't rebuild something from nothing. So if you are missing most of it, you can't really rebuild that. But if you have cartilage and you put gentle pressure, like we're doing in this stretch, on that cartilage, and it's a long sustained pressure, your body will signal, okay, we need more cushion needed here for this reason. If you simply do running, that's also impactful, right? That causes compression, but it's a repetitive compression which will degrade cartilage. So the body, of course, will be signaling we need more, but it just doesn't work as effectively, and I don't actually know why, but it seems to work. So Again, this is a great preventative and it's good for recovery as well, but it's better to prevent, definitely. So next up is our feet. So I can't even specify which tendons and ligaments. It's kind of all of them. And what we're doing with the feet is getting that, the arches. So most of us, as we get older, our arches start to fall because of shortened or lengthened ligaments in a not as healthy way and less strength. So we'll work on that in a different class perhaps, but we want to lengthen all the ligaments on the top of the foot so that we're able to maintain that arch that we're born with. Okay, that was 3 minutes. So to come out of this one, I like to head up and back to a downward dog after this one. So we slow, move forward. And then I like to even do a bit of a one leg goes back. My knee does a little click. It's like it goes back into place. And then up and back into a downward dog. So this isn't, we're not specifically trying to stretch things. It will stretch, but this is just more of a counter so that we can let the blood flow return to the lower limbs and let the blood flow up and down the legs. Couple deep breaths here. Maybe walking it out a little bit. All right, and then for the next one, we can start on hands and knees. Tuck the toes under, and let's see, do we want the feet all the way together? Maybe almost all the way together. The heels are straight up high to the sky, so don't let them tip outward or inward, but straight up and down. And then I like to take a peek at my toes and just make sure all my toes are facing directly forward. And then lower my knees again, and then sit up and back onto the heels. So this is our toe stretch. I don't know if there's a better name for it, but why get creative in stretch names? It stretches the toes. The only problem with being on a blanket is that my knees are trying to slide forward. So again, same with this one. Don't go in it too far. This one is for some people super intense. For others, it's not intense at all. For me, it's an intense one. So if it's too intense, lean forward onto something, maybe onto the floor, or if you're in front of a couch or something, lean forward onto that. But we're looking to stretch the plantar fascia. So that's the big band that stretches across the bottom of the foot. And for runners, this one can be problematic. It's super common to get plantar fasciitis if you're a runner or if you're a human. It's one of those things that are fairly common. And this kind of a stretch is great for rehab if you have it, but way easier to not get it in the first place by doing this stretch, because plantar fasciitis is one of those ailments that the cure hurts. So it's kind of a little bit of a hamster wheel or a catch-22 where the thing that you're supposed to do, you don't want to do because it hurts, but you have to do it to not hurt anymore. So prevention is better, but this is the best stretch I found. I know some people will be seated and pull the toes back and do that as a stretch. And there's 2 reasons why I don't find that as effective as this one. One is there's no way you've got as much pressure as if your whole body weight is on your toes. So again, you want to find the spot where you're feeling a gentle stretch no more, but when you're just pulling the toes back, I think that very few of us can actually feel enough of a stretch that it's effective. And then the second reason is because if I'm sitting here, whether my hands are forward, stabilized on something, or I'm staying here, it is a sustained stretch. So it's the exact same amount of pressure. But if you're pulling the toes back with your hand, often you lose your grip, you have to resituate, and then you've just ended that stretch and you're starting again. So the act of resituating your hand on your toes will actually make you go out of the stretch. And for tendons and ligaments, we need that sustained hold for minimum, well, they say for muscles, the optimal stretch is a static 1 minute. And then for yin, I do 3-minute holds. So again, every time you're resituating, you're starting from scratch. So we are almost there. This one's a doozy for me. So I just keep talking, and hopefully that makes the time go by faster. Last maybe 10 seconds or so. So we lean forward, and I like to come out of this one slowly. I mean, I would like to just pop straight out of it, but it feels weird if I do. So moving forward a couple inches, hold, forward a couple inches, hold, forward a couple inches, hold, and then, I don't know, take a second. One leg goes back maybe, other leg goes back, and then we'll head up and back to a down dog. I can almost not speak after that one. Ooh, okay. And then maybe a little walking of the dog. And right about now, my toes are feeling amazing. So it's a super intense stretch, but after a bit, it feels amazing. Okay, so we've prevented plantar fasciitis. Now I suppose you have to do the exercise more than once, but the next one is, I just call it ankle stretch. And it's for the Achilles tendon in the back of the ankle / heel. So again, this is not a traditional yoga pose or anything. This is just one that I stumbled into. So I'm going to start with my left foot because it's easier facing the camera. So I'm kneeling and I'm going to keep my right leg where it is. My left leg, I'll just step my foot on the floor and see my heel's off the floor and I'm mostly on my right leg. But then I'm going to try to place most of my weight onto the left foot. So from here, I'll start our timer, but it's a bit of a choose your own adventure. So if you've been in my classes before, obviously we've done this a few times, but for anyone who watches this later, I'm going to throw this up on YouTube. And this is like a choose your own adventure kind of, you have to situate yourself in a way like maybe move forward, moving back, try to get the heel down towards the floor. And then once it is on the floor, if you're like, it's already on the floor, then what you're trying to do is move forward. So if you think about trying to get your shin bone onto the top of your foot, that's the motion we're going for. So if you're like, well, I'm already really flexible here. Well, there's always more to go unless your shin is actually on your foot. So trying to get that sort of a space. And usually when I mention that visual, people are like, oh yeah, okay, I feel it now. So I like to have my heel just slightly up off the floor. So I'm leaning forward quite a bit and quite a bit of pressure here too. So we're looking for a gentle stretch. But I know for me, this one is easier, I think, than the last one, the toe stretch. I felt like it was super intense. This one, I've got quite a bit of weight on it and I do feel the stretch, but it's a little less intense for me. Sometimes people are the opposite. They're like, I don't feel anything in the toe stretch, but this one's intense. So the reason why we want to target the tendons and ligaments here, specifically the Achilles tendon, is a couple of reasons. We do want to lengthen the tendon, so try to not move around too much. Hold, so static hold. Because longer ligaments and tendons are better, it's healthier. You know, we're born with a certain length and over time they shorten. So if you don't target the ligaments, I really feel like this is why we get things like tendonitis, because now your muscles have to be extra flexible to take up the brunt instead of targeting the tendons and keeping them the same length. Secondary to that, by creating a little bit of in some instances we do compression. This one is more of a pull, a gentle pull. If you pull on something gently, it will strengthen. So gentle and sustained. If you pull on it really quickly, it will break, right? Especially when speaking of tendons and ligaments. So it's just really good for preventative as well. That was a lot of talking. But to recap, the two reasons is to actually lengthen and to strengthen. You might need to resituate if you have actually gotten a bit more flexibility and mobility while we're here. There we go. Slowly switching sides. So anytime we're working with tendons or ligaments, go extra slow, 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 slow. So I'm coming out of it a couple millimeters, hold. Coming out of it a couple millimeters, hold. Coming out of it a couple millimeters, hold, and we'll switch sides. I like to just always do this, I don't know what you call that, like a stretch backwards between sides, between exercises. Here we go, right foot. So same thing, and sometimes one side is more flexible than the other. Mine is, actually. I've got one side more flexible. That's okay. It'll even out over time. Another thing to mention too, though, when I call this program or class yoga for runners, this is not meant to be incorporated into your runs. So this is not your warm-up, this is not your cool down, this is completely separate. So different time, different day. This is for creating long-term health in your muscles and tendons and ligaments, well, specifically tendons and ligaments for today's class. One kind of interesting thing is that I know there was a lot of research on don't do static stretching and don't do static holds if you're a runner or an athlete or a ski racer or a swimmer, that kind of thing, because they found that your fast twitch muscles, when elongated, were less powerful. And my rebuttal to that is, so you might, if your tendons and ligaments are of adequate length and they're healthy and you do the yoga, you do the stretching, you might lose a tiny bit of speed. I think, number one, the amount of speed that you'll lose is negligible. I really think we're talking like thousandths of a second. If you're like, yeah, but I'm an Olympian, that counts. Okay, fair enough. However, this type of a stretch routine will make your tendons and ligaments specifically, and then in a follow-up class, muscles, healthier and will reduce injury. So as every athlete knows, injury is inevitable. It's a part of training. It's what happens. And what happens when you're injured? You're not training, which means you're not getting faster. So my theory, and I'm really confident about it, is that by stretching and gaining and maintaining maximum range of motion in the human body, you will be able to train more, which will give you more opportunity to gain power and strength and will actually make you faster in the long run. Final answer. A little bit longer here. So I notice this is stretching a little bit less now, so I can just put another little bit of pressure onto the Achilles. Really super gentle though. Really, really super gentle. So there is a bit of a difference, and it's nice to learn that. The difference between stretching a ligament and a muscle. So our time is up. Before we come out, remember, move slowly. So I'm going to come out a couple millimeters, hold, a couple millimeters, hold, and then nice and slow, coming all the way out. And then whatever organic movements you want to do. I like to do my fancy dancy, one leg back, and then the other leg back. Okay, so the next one is a seated forward fold. So this one is really important. And again, this is not to be done right before your run or right after, because we're holding for 3 minutes. And so it's that long lasting flexibility that we're looking for here. Okay, so we start in Dandasana staff pose, which is just legs forward, feet together, lifting up nice and tall. The one thing we definitely do not want to do, especially because we're working on tendons, is pull the flesh away, which a lot of people like to do because it feels better. And it feels like, yeah, now my sit bones are on the floor. So what we do instead is pressing up, lift up off the floor, and then place the sit bones down onto the floor evenly, equally, so that the tendons and the ligaments and the muscles are all square before we head forward into our stretch. So lifting up nice and tall, and then reaching forward, forward, forward for shins, ankles, or toes, whatever you can find. And then we hold. So this is known as a hamstrings stretch. But what we're doing today is try not to move at all. Like when we say static stretch, we literally mean like freeze, hold, don't move. And you could place a pillow or two and rest your head on the pillows, or just like, I don't know, whatever kind of a setup. I love for yin having lots of props so that you don't move at all. And the reason why is because we do want to stretch the hamstrings, and this one is actually stretching the hamstrings muscles. But when we hold for 3 minutes, we are also affecting the tendons, right? So what happens is after about a minute or so, studies have shown, and I don't have the reference for that, I'll find it. But a really good amount of time for a muscle to stretch is a 1 minute hold. That's sort of the most effective, efficient. After that, it's the law of diminishing returns. So after 1 minute, then what happens? The muscle has stretched as much as it's going to for the next little while. Then what gets affected? Well, the next thing close to the bone is the tendon. So after 1 minute, see, I found I went into it a little bit more, and in the beginning, I felt the stretch mostly in the belly of the muscle. So that's the belly, like the heart of the hamstrings muscles, is actually closer to the knees than it is to the sit bones. But after a minute, so starting kind of right now, I just sort of started to feel that transition up towards the sit bones. Now, I know in yoga, we often talk about try not to feel it in that space, but that's specifically when you're trying to target the muscles. Okay, so if we're doing a 1 minute hold, you do not want to be feeling that in the tendons. You want to be feeling that in the muscles. But if we're holding for a longer period of time, you're going to feel a gentle pulling in, like almost up towards the sit bones. So it's okay as long as it doesn't hurt. And again, it must be gentle. If it's really pulling, that's going to be counterproductive. We're actually going to be doing damage. So there is a fine line and a balance that you want to maintain. You want to feel the pull, but zero pain, like zero. Like it's just oh yeah, I can feel where the muscle attaches to the bone, and that space is the tendon. So that's a lot of what yoga is trying to learn the body. Okay, feel. What am I feeling? Am I feeling a stretch in the muscle? Am I feeling a stretch in the tendon? And it's kind of cool if you're really paying attention. You can feel those subtleties, right? They really are subtle. And we're almost at the 3 minute mark here. And then slowly come on up, and then just take a second after that. And so I noticed when I started yoga, I did do the whole pull the flesh away. And after I came out, something would feel just not quite right. Like I would feel it more. It would be more than a gentle pull. I could not figure out a way to not have my tendons feeling really overstretched, and that's because they were being overstretched. So this should hopefully feel nice and even. Everything's even because we were square as we stretched those tendons. Okay, so the next one up also is stretching muscles. So we need to be careful. And as always, if 3 minutes is too long, come out a little bit and then go back into it. We won't experience as many benefits until we get to that 3 minute mark, but we also want to be super gentle and nice with the body and work our way towards it. Your body will adjust very quickly. I've actually been surprised how quickly the human body will adjust. So am I going to move? I like a lot of cushion for this one. So this is our low lunge, and I like blocks for this one too. So we'll start with the left leg back, and the knee is down. So I'm kneeling on my left knee and right foot forward. Oh, you know what? I have to do a weird click of a hip. There we go. And then I'm going to start our timer and shift my pose forward. And for this one, we want to lift up nice and tall. So this is for the hip flexor. So this is the iliopsoas muscle, and it is a muscle stretch. However, at each end of any muscle is a tendon that attaches that muscle to the bone. So after our minute here, we will get into the tendons. So a few things. This one is a really intense one for me. I don't know if it is for you, but this is half for me, half a muscle strength or an arm strengthener and half a leg stretcher. So the more forward you are, the less it'll stretch on the hip flexor muscles. So if I go like this, that stretches more. If I go here, that's more gentle, and I'm placing some weight onto the blocks. So super gentle, and we want it to be super gentle, right? Eventually, we can place all of our weight onto the legs and it's fine. But for now, whatever we need to do. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the angle of the front leg. I have mine at like an obtuse angle. It doesn't need to be. You can have your ankle behind your knee if you want to, or in front of, or straight underneath. It doesn't really affect anything safety-wise. The reason why I have my foot forward is simply because my arms aren't long enough. If I have my ankle right underneath my knee, then I'm higher, and I just feel like my arms aren't long enough. So if I move my foot forward, now my whole pose is a little bit lower. So it's just geometry. It's not anything to do with what way the pose is proper. Plus, I think it might be slightly easier if you have your ankle. Yeah, this is less of a stretch. So this is probably optimal for most people. And then the ankle right beneath the knee is a little bit more intense and maybe more proper. But if you're looking to go beyond this stretch, the next level is the splits. So I just sort of start walking mine forward, and then my arms are long enough for the stretch. So it also is a bit of a choose your own adventure. You want to get enough of a stretch, but not too much. So you can explore with where the foot is in relation to the knee. But I have heard some claims of never, ever, ever have the knee beyond the ankle, to which that's been kind of debunked, I think, enough now that most people are aware that it's okay. The only exception would be is if you, yeah, we're out of time. Let's switch sides. So slow, 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 slow. And then changing sides. I think I'm the slowest person in the world to change sides. I always say, move like you're 108, intentionally. I do so unintentionally. I just move slow, and that's fine. So taking all the time you need to get set up and find the right angles for everything, the amount of leaning forward or upright. Eventually we want to be completely upright with the torso. So once again, totally okay for the knee to be beyond the ankle, with the exception of if you have very, very, very weak quadriceps muscles. If you're really weak here, what you'll notice, I don't think there's any safety danger, but you will notice a little bit of pulling on the patella, like the kneecap. If you do send the knee forward, you might feel it there. I don't think you actually would even in this particular stretch. But if you were, for example, tuck the toes under and up like this, you would, right? So for a warrior 1, warrior 2, that kind of thing. Again, it's not really a safety issue so much, but you'll feel if you have very, very weak quadriceps, you'll feel a bit of a pull on the patella, and we don't want to do that. So, because it's just not comfortable. So again, checking in. Is this enough of a stretch? Is it too much? Trying not to move. I'm not good at that. That takes all of my focus and concentration. But by now we should be getting into the tendons part. And if you have really, really good body awareness, you'll be able to feel the difference. When we start, it's all the muscle. The muscle's taking over everything. And then when the muscle elongates to its full capacity after about a minute or so, then the tendons start feeling it as well. So that's why it's good to keep checking in, because we want sustained pressure and a very, very small amount on the tendons. In our last few moments here, I'll just mention that this particular stretch is really good for low back injury reduction. So most of us have short, weak psoas muscles or hip flexor muscles. So lengthening them allows our spine to be in a neutral, healthy position when we're upright, and then especially if we're adding running. So just a good stretch all around. Okay. We're done this one now, so slow, slow, slow. I actually like to use my hands to push so I don't have to use my muscle strength, like push against the block. And my knee to slow, slow, slow. Come on out. And take your time to get all of the way out. And that is all I have for you for specifically ligaments and tendons for runners. So a bit of a shorter class, which is good for a couple of reasons. One, my washer died. I need to find a new one. I got to find a new used washing machine. And I think it's good to do yoga in like half hour or less, right? People are busy. Doing a full hour or 75 minutes or even 90 minutes is great once in a while too. But this is just something you can do to keep the health of your ligaments and tendons in a fairly short amount of time. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a really good rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Namaste.